All right, Casey, well, it's time to look at some kids' slop.
Yeah, Kev, we have recently been alerted to the fact that YouTube has been beset by a bunch of AI-generated slop for toddlers, and it's time to take a look and see what we're dealing with.
My colleague at the New York Times, Arijeta Lajka, has a news story about this called How AI-Generated Videos Are Distorting Your Child's YouTube Feed. And I read the story. I loved it. I thought, I've got to see some of this slop for myself. So today, let's take a look at this emerging new genre of AI slop directed at kids with a new installment of the Hard Fork Review of Slop.
Hard Fork Review of Slop.
All right, what do we have up first?
First is a video about the alphabet. Do you know the alphabet?
You know, I keep meaning to learn it.
Okay, let's see how the AI-generated alphabet videos are doing.
Kids TV, ABC Farm, Animals.
So far, so good. Okay.
Why are they being squirted out of a little paint bottle?
Oh, I'm deeply uncomfortable with this. I'm going to have to answer so many questions from my 3-year-old about why ducks come out of toothpaste tubes.
Yeah, if you're 3 years old, you need to know this. That is not how a duck is made. Let's take a look at this next video, Kevin.
What do we have now?
I believe we're going to see some animals appearing out of colorful clouds.
I is for Impala, green Impala says boing, boing, boing.
Join, join, join. J is for Jackal, yellow Jackal says ow, ow, ow.
Ooh, K is for
Oh boy.
pink kudu says spin, spin, spin.
L is for Lion, purple Lion says roar, roar, roar.
Rolling the R's on his roars. Why is the other animal a doctor? Why are they running toward the camera? Why is the kudu pink?
And what is a kudu? Now, I have to say, I'm a little older than the target age for these videos, but I'm learning things myself.
This is for you.
I'm learning. So this one uses a trope of having this doctor figure inject these animals with color.
And the doctor is also an animal.
And the doctor is also an animal.
Is this like anti-vax propaganda?
Well, the thing is, like, whoever is making the slop knows that needles are scary to children. So this is effectively just an engagement hack, right? You know the kid is going to watch the injection because the kid is afraid of needles. So this is just one of these like little miniature insidious ways that these like slop makers grab the attention of kids is by like showing them something scary in order to hypnotize them into continuing to watch the slop.
It does teach the valuable lesson that giving injections to children does result in them turning into pink kudus and running toward the camera. So all children need to learn that lesson eventually.
All right, this next one, Kevin, shows animals turning into armored vehicles, trucks, and planes, going to show once again that a key theme in slop for kids in 2026 is the transformation of animals.
Q is for quail, Q quail chirp, chirp.
Oh, wow. We got sort of mecha quail.
R is for rhino, R rhino snorts, snort, snort.
Okay.
Snort. S is for snake, S snake, hiss, hiss, teeth.
Okay. I wonder if that's a licensed use of the Thomas the Tank Engine IP.
Q, R, S, T, safari, animal sound.
Okay,
Oh my
unfortunately,
God.
that one slapped for me. My kid would be super into that, and I must never show him that.
Yeah, so, this one, it almost, this one reminds me of like cartoons that I watched as a kid where there was a lot of, Transformers transforming. And so I could understand why, a lot of little kids might like that one. But, this is making me realize that another reason why slop makers love the alphabet is because they can just stitch together a bunch of very short clips.
Yes.
And of course, most of the AI video generators that we have in this moment can only generate clips of up to a few seconds. So the alphabet just becomes a perfect way to stitch together all of that into one piece that
Great
still
point.
at least has some sort of coherence.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can see a world in which like this stuff is not actually that harmful. Like maybe it is going to teach some kids the alphabet, but it is just so weird. And it's like, it strikes me as just like, what, like, We already had a lot of videos teaching kids the alphabet. Why are people doing this?
But also, and listen, I'm no child neurologist, but I wonder about the consequences of essentially just creating images that are designed to overstimulate a child. You know what I mean? It's like, at least when you're watching like a normal cartoon, there could be moments of relative calm, or like a story might unfold over a few minutes. When you're just showing like raw visual stimuli and bombarding a kid with it just doesn't seem like it's probably that good for them.
This is how I know you do not have a child in the year of our Lord 2026. Because if you go onto like Coco Melon or any of the other like extremely popular children's programs, like they are essentially just this. It's like a series of very short clips. Maybe they do one song and then they do another, it cuts away to a different song, cuts away to a different song. It is like these same sort of like hyper stimulating environments. So like, I'm not saying that any of this is good. I'm just saying that like we have crossed the Rubicon a while ago and we are now in the land of the hyper stimulating children's entertainment. And like the big difference to my mind is now that it's just easier and cheaper to create this stuff.
Listen, this is my takeaway. When I have my child, which I do hope to do, the only visual stimulation that I'm going to allow them is a pile of sticks.
And Etch-a-Sketch?
And they can make their own fun, with the pile of sticks. But we are not going down this road, Kevin. Now we have another vehicle-related one here. This one has school buses, but in a crazy twist, it does not involve the alphabet.
The bus number 1 is green, 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 green. The bus number 2 is pink, pink, pink.
Okay, we have sort of a series of animals driving colored buses down a track. Oh, the wheels are on fire. Oh, that something went horribly wrong with that last bus.
That was the least offensive one we've seen.
Yeah.
That just sort of had some basic information about colors.
Yeah.
It did show a bus going down a slide, which is weird. And I could understand why a child would be hypnotized by it, but it does not offend me in the way that a tube of paint, turning into an alpaca does.
See, like, I feel like maybe I'm just sort of spending more time in like children's entertainment than you are, because none of this is either surprising or particularly disturbing to me. Like, I find this like weird, and it's why I don't let my child watch YouTube Kids, because it's just like low quality, and I think there's better stuff out there. But like all of children's entertainment sort of looks like this now. It's just like very bright colors, people with very big eyes, like singing songs that are like kind of ripoffs of something else. Like none of it is particularly creative or original.
How does your child react to only being allowed to watch Downton Abbey?
No, Bluey is the exception. Bluey, we're still good. Everything else is a vast wasteland.
Speaking of Bluey, you kind of have a Blues Clues things going on right now. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, if you connect the lines on my shirt, it tells you what the word of the day is.
Oh, all right. If you guess the word of the day, email hardfork@wettimes.com. All right, and why don't we wrap up with a lullaby about animated children tucking themselves into beds made out of fruit?
Love a fruit bed.
What'd you call me?
Princess Blondie in her strawberry bed.
Okay, we've got a
dreams around her head.
girl with a crown going into a bed made of strawberries.
Banana bright, swaying gently through
Banana
the
bed.
night. Orson snoozes
Kiwi
a
bed.
kiwi green. Cozy fuzz so calm and clean. Superboy in his orange glow drifts to sleep all warm and slow.
Casey, what do you make of the fruit beds?
This is just another one that feels a little more surreal than I am comfortable with, right? It's like, what is the child supposed to conclude from any of it? Like, it just sort of seems designed to confuse children more than to educate or even really entertain them.
Yeah, and there have been, I will say, like a few sort of videos in here where I'm like, oh, my kid would like that. But I don't like that he would like that. It's like, I don't want him watching stuff that's just like a bunch of animals like driving buses or lying in, fruit beds.
And also, kids like lots of things that are bad for them. That's why we don't let them use cocaine.
Yes. Well, now that we have seen the videos, I feel like we are armed and ready to have the conversation about what they all mean. So let's bring in my colleague, Arijeta Lajka.
I don't know. I feel like I need to cleanse first. Maybe go read a play by Shakespeare or something.
Just go watch an episode of Bluey. Very heartwarming. Arijeta Lajka, welcome to Hard Fork.
Thank you so much for having me.
I wanted to just ask, first of all, how did you get interested in this? How did you learn about this? Did you get a tip from a toddler submitting things through the New York Times confidential tip process? How did this come onto your radar?
Yeah, so no toddlers were involved in the making of this story. We had some ethical concerns there about showing them these videos repeatedly. But I started by getting interested in this because there is so much AI slop on all of our social media feeds, regardless of the platform. And I was interested in learning more about how this content is being presented to children and how it's being moderated. And so where do many children watch media? It's YouTube. So I started by looking at channels that parents approve of, channels like Miss Rachel and Bluey that are considered more high quality and thoughtful, and other popular channels like Cocomelon, and said, well, if I click on a Cocomelon video and I'm a toddler and I look at the recommended videos right next to that video, what sort of videos would I be recommended? And we focused on YouTube Shorts because a lot of these AI tools default to this vertical format. And so we just started scrolling through the feed and making a note of the different videos we were seeing. One of my colleagues actually coded a tool where I wasn't really interacting with the screen, so it wouldn't influence the algorithm. And I was just like scrolling down and it was making a note of all the different links I was seeing. And then we later analyzed these videos frame by frame, determined which videos were AI generated.
And we're using regular YouTube or YouTube Kids?
So we started looking at regular YouTube in a private browser because a lot of parents tend to put on their own YouTube accounts for their children. But then we also look through YouTube Kids, because it is a more controlled environment with content that's supposed to be approved for children.
And when you started this process, what were your sort of expectations? And then how much AI-generated stuff did you wind up seeing as like kind of a proportion of the total?
So I think, especially when I was watching channels like Miss Rachel and Bluey, I was expecting to see content that would be, more in the lines of those programs, right? More Bluey shorts. And I wasn't really seeing that. And I was surprised just about how much AI-generated content was being recommended. Like in one session alone, in one 15-minute session that we were scrolling, more than 40% of the videos were AI-generated.
Wow.
And how are you determining that? Is there like a sort of detection system that you're plugging these things into?
Yeah, the detection system is called looking at the videos.
Well, no, I'm saying like if you have a video of like an alpaca getting squeezed out of a paint tube, like that's very clearly not photorealistic, but it could be made using some like CGI software or something like that.
Yes,
how did you determine that this was AI?
Right. So I think some of these videos were a little bit more obvious, but we looked at them frame by frame and tried to look for inconsistencies. Like in some cases, the objects were just appearing in the background. There was text in the background that was distorted. If there was an animal in the background, it would morph into something else. Some of the videos were actually labeled as synthetic media, even though they were animated. And then we would also look at the YouTube channel and get a sense of like, okay, what sort of content have they been posting in the last few years? And even some of the channels that had been around, before the last 2 years where this technology really improved, they were making very simple, low-quality animation that looked nothing like what they had been posting the last few months.
Now, Arijeta, I have done a lot of reporting on YouTube, but it's been a few years. What are their actual policies like today on this kind of content?
So I sent them a few channels as examples. And I asked them what their policy is around flagging AI content that's being made for children, and that includes animated content. And they told me that content creators are required to label content that is realistic looking. In some cases, we saw that creators weren't labeling the content, and I'm referring to videos of animals, displaying behaviors that those animals don't do, like elephants doing gymnastic maneuvers on a tightrope. Those videos, for example, were not labeled as synthetic media. Some creators were labeling the animated videos, but it's not part of YouTube's policy. So it's really, the burden is falling on parents, especially for parents who may not want their child to watch AI-generated media, to determine, okay, what sort of video is this? And not only that, but you have to click through the video and then you see the synthetic media label. And when it comes to kids content on YouTube, YouTube doesn't allow comments. So sometimes when there's an AI generated video, you'll have people in the comments say like, this is AI. And in this case, parents can't really talk amongst themselves as to what the video is.
Has there been any backlash yet that we've seen from parents against these kinds of videos? Like, are some parents upset by what they're seeing?
Yeah, we came across several Reddit forums where people were asking how to get around this AI slop for kids, whether there was a filter on YouTube. Some parents recommended making a playlist. Other parents were like, get off YouTube altogether. And I think a lot of it is also going to fall on parents to closely supervise what kids are watching, since the algorithm is pushing so much of this content.
Right. Although, of course, the whole point of YouTube is that it's what you show your kids so that you don't have to spend time with them, right? And not in a mean way, but like maybe you have to cook dinner, right? Like,
right.
If
parents are busy.
Yeah. Like if parents were, sitting down to like watch YouTube with their children, like we would not be in this situation.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, as the parent of a almost 4-year-old, like the couple times that I've like found him watching something like this because he went onto the YouTube Kids app when he wasn't supposed to or something, it's like, my feeling about it is not like this is damaging my child. It's just like, this is so bad.
Yeah.
Like the quality is just so bad. And I wonder if you think, Arijeta, like there's any sort of evidence, what do we know about the actual effects of this on kids? Is the worry that it's actually harming them, or is the worry that there's just better stuff they could be watching?
So there's a lot of factors to consider. So these videos contain extraneous effects, and we know that when videos contain all these bedazzling elements, kids can learn as well. They're also devoid of a narrative arc, which is really beneficial for kids to watch content with a beginning, middle, and end, with characters they can relate to, that they're familiar with, watching content that uses short phrases that they can understand and doesn't feature these abstract concepts. Worst case, a lot of these videos are fantastical, and that could be cognitively overloading to the child. And when it comes to short form content, experts say for children under 5, we know their attention systems are still developing. So it's hard for them to follow rapid changes. And it really puts a heavy burden on children to process that information, especially when we see this more realistic, fantastical content of animals, showing bizarre behaviors.
When I was growing up, Kevin, in the 1900s, I would watch He-Man. Remember He-Man?
Yes.
It was a cartoon about a gay guy who had a sword and rode a tiger around. And as a young...
Was he gay canonically?
Well, I think not canonically, but read between the lines. Okay? Read between the lines.
Okay.
And, as a young gay kid, I could see that and relate to that. And, and yes, the stories were fantastical, but to Arieta's point, there was a beginning and a middle and an end.
Right.
And, it didn't exactly, teach me in the ways of the world, but, it maybe told me something about, storytelling and narrative, and it wasn't just sort of raw flashing shapes and colors.
Yes. I mean, I remember before I had a kid having this argument with people at YouTube about YouTube Kids, because there was discussion and concern even back in 2017 or 2018 about these weird videos. They weren't AI generated at the time, but they were weird sort of Cocomelon ripoffs. And I remember saying to these YouTube people, you guys gotta change the way that you do this. Instead of just default allowing channels to serve content to very young children, you have to kind of set up some whitelist where if you prove that your stories have a beginning, middle, and end, and there's some thought being put into them, you are allowed to be on YouTube Kids. And if you're not, if you're just some content farm that's churning out Cocomelon ripoffs, you're not going to be allowed on. So do you get the sense, Arijeta, that there's any concern or consideration of this at YouTube, or are they basically just sort of we got bigger fish to fry?
I mean, these videos are recommended to me and these channels multiple times, and I've been looking at these videos since November. So,
and what has it done to your brain?
I bet you know your alphabet.
I do, yeah. The alphabet, and those songs really get stuck in your head, right?
Yeah. Oh, trust me, I know.
Yeah. And then it's so fascinating to me how much more these videos are recommended to me than more thoughtful content like PBS Kids, for example, because PBS Kids also puts out shorts, but I was seeing more of this than PBS Kids.
I mean, just to sort of echo Kevin's question, this has gotten me thinking about Elsagate, right? This 2017 controversy where parents see a lot of really surreal content in YouTube and they get very upset. It seems like we have not seen that kind of backlash yet. And I'm wondering, is it because we just feel like the content is actually better here in some ways? Or are most parents just not actually aware of just the volume of slop that might be being served to their kids?
Because so many of these videos are animated, it may not be obvious to some parents that these are AI generated, but we were working in a more contained environment. So like elsewhere on YouTube, there are so many videos featuring popular characters that children like in very violent scenarios. There's this show called Masha and the Bear, and I remember I typed in Masha and I was coming across videos of Masha's stomach being cut open, and that channel was putting up these videos, and YouTube didn't take them down until I linked out to one of them in my story.
Wow.
And I don't know if any of you know children who are obsessed with that K-pop Demon Hunters film.
Sure.
But there are so many horrible videos featuring those characters. And again, it's nonsensical. Sometimes the characters are pregnant, and those are all over YouTube as well if you type in those characters' names.
And by the way, that was the exact scandal of Elsagate, was that people were seeing Elsa from Frozen pregnant all over YouTube. So, I mean, like, this truly is just a sequel to Elsagate, and I think it's, interesting that it has flown under the radar until your story, Arijeta.
Right. And before, I mean, you had to have some sort of animation skills to do that. But like now anyone can do this in a few minutes. So, we're gonna be seeing more of this content.
And again, what is so insidious here is that the people who are making these videos are counting on the fact that regular kids are going to go searching for K-pop Demon Hunters and Masha the Bear, and they are unwittingly just going to be served this slop of the poor bear getting cut open and the pregnant demon hunter just through the recommendation algorithm. And this is where YouTube's responsibility lies, right? Like this is where YouTube should be saying, we're actually not going to show this incredibly disturbing stuff to kids.
Yeah, I would say among the parents of young children that I know, very few of them let their kids watch YouTube, even YouTube Kids, for this exact reason. That it's you might start with Masha the Bear, you might start with a K-pop Demon Hunters video, you might start with Bluey or Coco Melon, but you go away for 10 minutes to cook dinner and you come back and they're on their third hop from the recommendation and they're watching some weird AI generated thing with Spider-Man, on the surgery table or something. And that's what are we doing here?
Yeah, because it turns out that all of these recommendation algorithms work exactly the same way. They find the video that is the closest to going over the line, and they find that it gets more engagement than any other. And so that's what shows up in the feed, right? So how many times are we going to have to revisit this story?
Yes.
It really depresses me, honestly.
Ariana, until the platforms like YouTube take more action on this, what can parents do in the short term? I mean, if you're going to let your kid watch YouTube or YouTube Kids, is there anything you can do to toggle off the AI slop, or do you just kind of have to make peace with it?
In terms of filtering it out, there isn't an option to do that right now. In January, YouTube announced that they're going to add some controls where parents can set time limits to YouTube Shorts. We're seeing a lot of this AI content in YouTube Shorts, so that might be an option.
They could call it the Slop Watch. It's like a stopwatch except for slop.
I just wonder if all of this is a losing battle. I feel like
Kevin Roose, do not bring your nihilism into the recording studio today.
Well, just look at what is happening to older children with Tung 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 Sahur and all the AI slop from TikTok, and I just feel we're seeing old people falling for AI slop on Facebook, and middle-aged people fall for it on X and Instagram, and it just feels like we're kind of creating this lifelong pipeline of just whatever slop is going to be most engaging to you.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the thought that I'm having as we wrap up, is that while right now we're talking about the concerns we have for kids, I think that, older teens and adults wind up having the same issue, which is they open up TikTok or Instagram Reels and they see something that is designed to hypnotize them as well. And it might not be colors and shapes and the alphabet, but it does seem like the basic idea is just sort of turn your brain off and experience the raw visual stimuli for as long as, we can get you to.
Yes. Ariana, fascinating story. Thank you so much for doing this digging and watching all of these children's videos so that I don't have to and so that I can protect my child from them. Appreciate it.
Thank you so
Way to
much
take one
for
for the
having
team.
me.
Yes. Ariana, you really did take one for the team on this one, I have to say.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks.